Picture this: a perfect suburban street. Lush green lawns fed by the rhythmic hiss of sprinklers. Kids ride their bikes down pristine asphalt, past neat rows of houses that could be in Ohio or Kansas. It looks and feels like a peaceful slice of Middle America. But now, pull the camera back. Way back. That perfect grid of green and white isn't surrounded by cornfields or rolling hills. It's an island. A tiny, almost impossible mirage of civilization sitting abruptly in the middle of a vast, hostile sea of reddish-orange sand dunes. A place where the sun beats down with punishing force, and the horizon is nothing but shimmering heat and endless sand in every direction. So how is this possible? How do you build, and more importantly sustain, a modern town for thousands of people in one of the most inhospitable environments on Earth? Where does the water for those perfect lawns and daily showers come from? How do you power thousands of air conditioners when the nearest power plant is hundreds of miles away? And how do families live, work, and raise children for years in total isolation? The answers are a testament to some of the most incredible engineering and logistical planning you will ever see. What you're about to discover are the secrets behind these modern-day pioneer towns. We're talking about massive hidden infrastructure that pulls life-giving water from aquifers deep beneath the desert floor, solar arrays that create cities of power in the middle of nowhere, and supply chains so complex they can deliver fresh groceries and ice cream on a weekly basis. But beyond the staggering technology, we'll uncover the human ingenuity, the resilient spirit of the dedicated workers, engineers, and families who turn a remote corporate outpost into a genuine community. By the end of this journey, you'll understand that building a town in the desert isn't just about concrete and pipes. It's about conquering one of nature's greatest challenges. If you are amazed by the sheer force of will it takes to make the desert bloom, type ingenuity in the comments below. Now let's dig into the single most critical element they had to solve before a single brick could ever be laid. That single most critical element? It isn't a lack of resources or the crushing isolation. It's something far more primal. It's raw, unfiltered heat, a relentless, punishing force that the engineers and workers on the ground have a name for. They call it the thermal assault. Imagine stepping outside the protective bubble of the town walls for just a moment. It's not like a hot summer day you've ever experienced. It's like opening the door to an industrial blast furnace. A wall of superheated, bone-dry air hits you so hard it can make you dizzy, feeling as if it's physically sucking the moisture from your skin and lungs. We're not talking about a once-a-season heat wave. In these desolate corners of the world, 120 degrees Fahrenheit or 50 degrees Celsius isn't an anomaly. It's the standard for a summer afternoon. The sun isn't just bright, it becomes a physical weight, a constant oppressive radiation from above. But here's what's truly mind-blowing. The ambient temperature is only half the battle. Think about this. Any piece of metal left exposed to that direct sun becomes a literal weapon. A simple steel wrench can reach temperatures hot enough to warp plastic, and touching the metal handle of a truck door or a simple doorknob without wearing thick leather gloves? That isn't just a painful mistake. It's an immediate second-degree burn. That's not an exaggeration. It's a documented medical reality for any unprepared person in this environment. So this thermal assault dictates absolutely everything. It's the first war that has to be won before a single foundation can be poured, or a single family can move in. You can't just work a normal 9-to-5 shift or build a normal house. The entire structure of life must be engineered from the ground up to defeat this one, constant enemy. But winning the war against the thermal assault is only the first battle. As soon as you solve for the heat, another more insidious enemy is already at your door. An enemy so small it's practically invisible, but so pervasive it threatens to choke the very life out of these settlements. The engineers call it the particulate invasion. Now, when you hear sand, you're probably picturing the coarse grains you find at the beach. Wrong. This isn't that. Not even close. We're talking about a superfine, microscopic dust. A powder so light it behaves more like a liquid or a gas than a solid. Think of it like a reddish-orange flour. A silken powder that can hang suspended in the air for hours, creating a dense, suffocating haze. Your first instinct would be to seal everything shut. New weather stripping, rubber gaskets, industrial caulk on every seam. That's how you'd fight a normal dust storm. But against this enemy, that's like trying to stop smoke with a fishing net. It is a complete waste of time. These particulates are so molecularly fine they will work their way through any conventional seal, under every doorframe, and straight through the microscopic pores in building materials. So how do you defeat an invader that can't be blocked? The answer is a work of absolute genius. You don't try to build a better wall, you use the laws of physics to create an invisible force field. This brings us to a critical piece of hidden engineering. Every single building, from the largest administrative office to the smallest family home, is built around what's called a positive pressure HVAC system. Here's how this masterpiece of environmental control works. The system constantly pulls in the hot, dusty outside air and forces it through a series of incredibly dense, sophisticated filters, scrubbing it clean. Then, it pumps that purified, cool air directly into the building. The result? The air pressure inside the house becomes slightly higher than the air pressure outside. It's a tiny difference, completely unnoticeable to a person, but it changes everything. Because of this constant, gentle pressure, air from inside the house is always pushing out of every tiny, unavoidable crack, crevice, and seam. The house is in effect constantly exhaling. This outward flow of air creates an invisible, unstoppable barrier. Fine dust and sand simply cannot fight their way upstream against a current of air that is always pushing them away. This isn't an optional extra or a luxury upgrade. In these desert towns, positive pressure air is as fundamental to a home as its foundation. It is a constant, silent battle being won 24 hours a day in every single room. It's the only reason anyone can breathe clean air in the middle of a permanent dust storm. So now you have an entire town of homes, each one a fortress against the dust, constantly exhaling clean air from every seam. It's an incredible defense system. But that brings up an even bigger question. How do you power this invisible force field for an entire town? The system relies on a constant supply of cool air. In a place where it hits 120 degrees, that means running the air conditioning not just for a few hours, but 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, in every single building. Think about the sheer scale of that problem. In a normal suburb, you'd just put a standard AC unit on the side of every house. Now imagine thousands of those units, all groaning under the strain of the thermal assault. The constant droning roar would be deafening. The repair bills from units literally melting in the sun would be astronomical. It would be a complete and total logistical nightmare. So did these engineers just install thousands of superpowered, failure-prone AC units? Wrong. They did something far more intelligent, something you'll almost never see in a conventional town. They built a single centralized heart for the entire settlement, a massive industrial-scale cooling plant that the workers refer to as the life support grid. Picture this. Tucked away on the edge of town is a building that looks more like a factory or a power station. Inside, enormous chillers work around the clock, cooling massive quantities of water down to a shocking 40 degrees Fahrenheit, just a few degrees above freezing. But here's the masterpiece of engineering. That ice-cold water is then pumped into a hidden circulatory system, a vast underground network of super-insulated pipes, like arteries, running beneath every street and branching off to every single home in the community. And here's the truly beautiful part for the residents. When that chilled water reaches your house, it doesn't feed a loud, rattling outdoor compressor. Instead, it flows silently through a simple heat exchanger inside your home's HVAC system. That's it. No moving parts outside, no roar, no vibration. Oh, the result is an omnipresent, library-quiet coolness that feels less like a utility and more like a law of nature. The entire town doesn't just have air conditioning. The entire town is air-conditioned. It's a single, integrated organism, kept alive by one enormous, powerful, and completely hidden industrial heart. So we have a town that's a fortress, a community kept cool by a hidden industrial heart, and kept clean by an invisible force field of air. The biggest engineering battles seem to have been won. But that silent, powerful cooling grid requires water. A lot of it. And that brings us to the next staggering challenge, and the single most counterintuitive secret of these desert settlements. Let's talk about the water paradox. When you think about a town in the middle of a barren desert, you assume that water is the most precious, most rationed commodity there is. You'd picture strict limits on showers, rules against washing cars, and a public campaign to conserve every single drop. Wrong. What if I told you that a resident in one of these towns uses more water than almost any other person on Earth? The numbers will absolutely blow your mind. The average American uses between 80 to 100 gallons of water per day. In these desert communities, that number can soar to over 400 gallons per person, every single day. To put that in perspective, that's the equivalent of every man, woman and child filling up 8 standard bathtubs with fresh, clean water and dumping them out daily. So where is all that water going? It's not just for longer showers or drinking more because of the heat. That only accounts for a tiny fraction. The real answer is just outside the front door. It's the lawns. Those lush, impossibly green carpets of grass. The vibrant flower beds bursting with colour. The shady trees lining every single street. An immense, staggering amount of life-giving water is pumped 24 hours a day into the ground, simply to keep this small patch of the desert looking like a suburb from Ohio. But here's the critical part that most people would never understand. This isn't vanity. It's not about making the company town look good for a brochure. It is a deliberate, calculated weapon in the war against despair. Imagine for a moment you're one of the residents. Every single day you step outside the cool, clean bubble of your home, and beyond the fence line you see it. An endless, soul-crushing expanse of reddish-orange sand and rock, shimmering under a brutal sun. No green, no life. Just a hostile alien landscape stretching to an empty horizon. That visual monotony day after day has a proven crushing effect on human psychology. So the planners made a brilliant and incredibly expensive decision. They realized that to keep a community of thousands mentally healthy for years on end, you had to fight the desert not just with engineering, but with life itself. That green grass isn't just grass, it's a psychological shield, a daily visual promise that normalcy exists. It's a defiant living declaration that this place is a home, not just a temporary outpost on a hostile planet. It's one more incredible hidden system that makes life not just possible but livable in the middle of nowhere. So that green lawn isn't a luxury, it's a psychological weapon, a defiant stand against the soul-crushing despair of the desert. But keeping that weapon loaded is a war in itself, a war you can't see. You might think keeping this oasis alive is as simple as running a sprinkler system 24/7. Wrong. In fact, doing that would be a complete disaster. It would turn a green paradise into a sterile white wasteland in a matter of months. The reason is a slow, silent killer that every drop of water leaves behind. Salt. As the brutal sun beats down, water evaporates at a phenomenal rate, pulling pure H2O into the air. But everything else, the dissolved minerals, the salts from the deep aquifers or desalination plants, is left behind, a toxic legacy. With every watering cycle, the concentration of salt in the topsoil creeps higher and higher until it eventually poisons the ground and chokes the life out of any plant. So how do you fight an enemy that arrives with your own life-giving water? This is where a different kind of soldier steps in. Not engineers or construction workers. We're talking about a small elite team of horticulturalists and irrigation engineers. These aren't just gardeners. They are botanical commandos, fighting a chemical war on a microscopic battlefield. Their job isn't to water the grass, it's to manage the very chemistry of the soil itself. And here's their masterstroke of a battle plan. It's all built around a hidden network of incredibly sophisticated sensors buried beneath every lawn and flower bed. These sensors aren't just measuring moisture, they're constantly analysing the soil's salinity. The moment that salt level reaches a dangerous threshold, an automated alert goes out. This triggers a completely different kind of watering event, a tactic called a leaching flush. The irrigation system doesn't just sprinkle lightly, it executes a controlled strategic flood. A massive volume of water is deliberately pushed deep into the ground, far below the root zone, literally washing the built-up salts down and away from the delicate plant life. At the same time, specialized chemical agents are injected into the water supply, compounds that act like magnets, binding to the harmful salt ions and helping flush them from the soil. It is a constant, precise, and completely hidden chemical intervention. It's the only reason that Green Psychological Shield remains standing. It's a quiet testament to the unseen heroes who figured out that to make the desert bloom, you can't just be a gardener, you have to be a chemist. All of these incredible interconnected systems, the chilled water, the clean air, the green grass, all hang by a single invisible thread. A thread you can't see, but one you can feel in your bones from the moment you arrive. It's a low, constant, omnipresent hum. A deep, foundational vibration that you don't so much hear as experience. It permeates everything. It's the background noise of every conversation, the subtle tremor in every glass of water. It's the town's one constant heartbeat. And what you're hearing is raw, relentless power, the sound of massive factory-sized power generation plants running at full capacity 24 hours a day. These aren't just supplementing a national grid. In many of these remote locations, they are the grid. They are the sole source of the colossal energy required to keep the bubble of life inflated against the crushing pressure of the desert. So what happens when that hum stops? Think about what that means. It's not just the lights going out, it's everything, all at once. The life support grid of chilled water shuts down. The positive pressure HVAC systems fail, and the invisible force field against the particulate invasion collapses. The water pumps that feed the psychological shield of green grass go silent. The entire fortress of engineering built to defy the desert is suddenly completely defenseless. A power outage that lasts for more than an hour isn't an inconvenience. It is a catastrophic multi-system failure, a potential death sentence. So how do you prepare for the unthinkable, with a redundancy plan so extreme it borders on paranoia? And it is a thing of absolute terrifying beauty. The moment the main grid falters, even for a microsecond, an automated system triggers the first line of defense. Massive warehouse-sized banks of industrial batteries kick in instantly, taking the entire town's critical load without a single flicker of the lights. But this is just a band-aid, a way to buy time, because at the exact same moment the real saviors are roaring to life. Tucked away in their own fortified bunkers are the town's secondary power plants. Diesel-guzzling monsters, what engineers call black start generators, kept in a constant state of readiness. Within minutes of a failure, these generators are spooled up to full power, synchronized, and ready to take over the entire electrical load of the settlement for days or even weeks if necessary. So that ever-present hum isn't an annoyance, it's a reassurance. It's the sound of an army of generators standing guard. It's the sound of victory in a war that never ever stops. It is the sound of survival. So you have this perfectly engineered bubble, a self-contained world with its own heart, its own lungs and its own immune system, all humming along in defiant victory against the desert. But what actually defines the edge of this manufactured paradise? What marks the line where the town ends and the hostile planet begins? You might imagine a white picket fence, a friendly town limit sign, maybe a landscaped roundabout. Wrong, not even close. Think 12-foot high, reinforced concrete walls, sleek, imposing, and absolutely unambiguous. Think modern security checkpoints staffed 24/7, with retractable steel barricades and guards who know every vehicle by sight. This isn't the entrance to a subdivision, it's an airlock. And that brutal, stark division creates a powerful effect that the original planners counted on. They call it the perimeter psychology. The wall isn't just a physical barrier, it's a psychological one. It creates a stark binary world. Inside is everything: order, safety, the hum of the power grid, the scent of sprinklers on green grass, the sound of children playing. Inside is life. Outside is nothing. It's a void. An empty, almost cinematic landscape of raw chaos where none of the rules of civilization apply. Residents don't just say they're leaving town, they say they're going outside the wire. Think about that for a moment. That's military language. It reframes the world in terms of safety and danger, known and unknown. Passing through those gates is a jarring, instantaneous transformation. 1 second you're on a pristine tree-lined street. The next, your tires hit a sun-baked track that seems to dissolve into the shimmering heat. The sounds, the temperature, the very air itself changes in an instant. This sharp, unforgiving boundary is the final and perhaps most important piece of the town's life support system. It's not really there to keep intruders out. It's there to keep sanity in. It's a constant, powerful, visual and mental declaration. On this side of the wall we have won. On that side is the desert. And the desert does not negotiate. Inside these walls you have a perfect, manufactured reality, a bubble of American suburbia protected from the hostile planet just a few feet away. But to make that illusion complete, you need more than just cool air and green grass. You need the single, most important anchor of civilian life: the grocery store. Picture this. You walk through automatic glass doors out of the desert heat and into a blast of cold, clean air. The floors are polished white tile, the lights are bright fluorescent, and stretching before you are aisle after aisle of a full-sized, American-style supermarket. A place that would not look out of place in suburban Illinois or Texas. You see kids arguing with their mums over brightly coloured boxes of cereal. You see a refrigerated section filled to the brim with gallons of fresh, cold milk. You pass a display of perfect, delicate raspberries and blueberries. But stop and think about that for a moment. How? How is this possible? Those berries weren't grown in a high-tech greenhouse out back. That milk didn't come from a local robotic dairy farm. They are thousands of miles from their source. That carton of milk began its life on a farm in Europe or North America. Those berries were picked in a field on another continent. So how do they cross a literal sea of sand and arrive here, not just intact, but perfectly fresh? The answer is one of the most incredible and most vulnerable parts of this entire operation. An umbilical cord of logistics that planners call the supply chain lifeline. This isn't a weekly delivery van. This is a dedicated fleet of dozens of state-of-the-art long-haul refrigerated trucks, climate-controlled fortresses on wheels, making a multi-day, non-stop journey across the most punishing terrain on the planet. For the entire trip, the temperature outside the truck's thin metal skin can be a scorching 130 degrees, but inside it's a constant computer-monitored 34 degrees Fahrenheit. But here's the truly mind-blowing part. The mission of this convoy isn't just to deliver calories, it's to deliver normalcy. The logisticians in charge could easily stock the town with months' worth of rice, flour, and canned meat. It would be infinitely cheaper and easier. But that's not the goal. The goal is to ensure a mother can buy the exact brand of cereal her child eats back home. The goal is to make sure a family can have fresh milk for their coffee every single morning. That box of Captain Crunch isn't just breakfast. That carton of fresh milk isn't just a beverage. They are a declaration. A message delivered fresh every week that says, you're not cut off, you're not isolated, you're still connected to the world you know. This refrigerated convoy isn't just a supply chain. It is one more critical and incredibly expensive psychological weapon in the war against despair. That refrigerated convoy is a lifeline, a rolling declaration that normalcy is still possible, but delivering a sealed carton of milk that can withstand a few bumps is one thing. What about delivering something so fragile, so full of life-giving water, that it begins to wilt and die the very moment it's picked? What about a single, perfect head of lettuce? Getting that one head of lettuce from a farm on another continent to this store shelf is the ultimate test of the supply chain lifeline. It relies on an unbroken, high-stakes system that logisticians call the cold chain. This isn't just about making things cold. The cold chain is an invisible, high-speed river of frigid air that must flow, uninterrupted, for thousands of miles. If that river is dammed for even a few minutes, not hours, minutes, the entire shipment is lost. So how do they do it? Picture this. Our head of lettuce begins its journey not in a truck, but in the climate-controlled cargo hold of a massive transport plane. It's chilled to a precise 34 degrees Fahrenheit as it flies over oceans and deserts. Then comes the first moment of extreme danger. The plane lands, and the cargo bay doors open onto a tarmac where the temperature is a blistering 140 degrees. This isn't a casual transfer. It is a race. Ground crews working with military precision have to move entire pallets of produce from the airplane's cold belly to the waiting refrigerated trucks in a matter of minutes before the thermal assault can begin to literally cook the vegetables inside their packaging. Once inside the truck, our lettuce is safe again in its 34-degree cocoon for the brutal multi-day journey you heard about, the final airlock. The truck doesn't just pull up to the back of the store, it backs into a sealed, refrigerated loading dock, creating a pressurized tunnel of cold air. The back of the truck opens directly into the cold of the store's receiving area. The lettuce never, for 1 second, touches the hot desert air. So after all that, every head of lettuce arrives perfectly crisp, right? Wrong. This is the brutal reality of the cold chain. The planners don't budget for zero failure. They budget for a shocking amount of it. Even with this incredible military-grade precision, they anticipate losing up to 30% of the most delicate produce like lettuce and fresh herbs before it ever even sees a shelf. To put that in perspective, for every 10 trucks of fresh salad greens that leave the airport, the equivalent of 3 of them are destined to be thrown away. It's an almost unimaginable cost. But here's what you need to understand. That massive calculated loss is deemed acceptable. It's the price you have to pay. Because the 70% that does make it, that one perfect crisp head of lettuce sitting under the fluorescent lights, isn't just food. It's a trophy, a symbol of a battle won against impossible odds. It's one more victory in the silent, unending war to make the desert feel like home. So we have these incredible interconnected systems of cold. The chilled water, the refrigerated trucks, the meticulously managed cold chain. An entire town kept at a perfect, life-sustaining temperature while the desert rages outside. It all seems like a complete and total victory over the laws of nature. But here's the one inescapable law of physics you can never defeat. A law that has a dramatic and frankly terrifying consequence that is paid on the other side of the wall. You can't destroy heat, you can only move it. Think about the air conditioner on the side of your house. It makes the inside cool by pumping hot air outside. Now remember the life support grid from earlier. That single centralized industrial heart cooling the entire town. Imagine that on the scale of a factory. For every single degree of coolness created inside that perfect suburban bubble, an equivalent amount of thermal energy, plus the massive waste heat from the machinery itself, has to be dumped somewhere. And that somewhere is the area immediately outside the town's perimeter walls. What this creates is not just a hot patch of desert. It's something else entirely. A man-made, localized heat island. An invisible wall of superheated air, blasting out from massive stadium-sized cooling towers and radiator fields hidden from the town's view. We're talking about a constant rolling wave of thermal energy, like the exhaust from a fleet of jet engines, that raises the ambient temperature in the immediate vicinity by a staggering 20 or 30 degrees. And here's the truly mind-blowing result. This invisible wall of heat is more effective at keeping wildlife away than the 12-foot concrete barriers. Desert animals, creatures perfectly adapted to survive the natural heat, cannot cross this man-made thermal dead zone. Scorpions, snakes, even hardy gazelles can sense this unnatural furnace from a distance and give the entire settlement a wide, wide berth. So the town's air conditioning does more than just cool the homes. It creates a secondary, invisible perimeter. A defensive ring not of concrete but of pure raw thermal energy. It is one more staggering, almost unbelievable consequence of this engineering marvel, a town that doesn't just exist in the desert, but actively reshapes the very climate around it. So the very climate around the town has been re-engineered. A fortress of cool air, clean water and green grass, all protected by a perimeter of concrete and a secondary wall of raw heat. It is a masterpiece of environmental control. But here's a question. Inside those walls, in that perfect suburban mirage, what about the social environment? Is it equally perfect? Does everyone get the same green lawn, the same quiet air conditioning, the same shot at the American dream in the middle of the desert? Wrong. The social structure of these towns is just as ruthlessly and brilliantly engineered as the physical infrastructure. You don't just move in and buy a house you can afford. This isn't a free market. Your life is assigned. This is a system that planners call assigned living, and here's how this staggering piece of social engineering works. Your job title, your seniority, your very position within the company dictates everything. Your street address, the square footage of your home, the number of bedrooms, and in many cases the very furniture inside it are all predetermined by your rank. The top executives and senior project managers, they're assigned large, detached, single-family homes on the most desirable streets, often with the largest lawns and the best views. Mid-level engineers and department heads, they get smaller, but still comfortable, townhomes or duplexes on the next street over. And the skilled technicians, support staff, and rotational workers, they live in multi-story apartment blocks or dormitory-style housing, designed for efficiency above all else. Think about this for a moment. It creates an instant, visible and completely unavoidable hierarchy. You know a person's approximate rank and salary not from their business card, but from their address. It takes the abstract corporate ladder and makes it a physical reality, mapped out on the streets of the town. This isn't just about saving space or simplifying logistics. It is a deliberate, powerful tool for motivation. You can literally look out your window and see the house you'll get with your next promotion. It's one more hidden and absolutely brilliant system designed to ensure this entire human machine runs with perfect, predictable order. So you have this absolute masterpiece of social and physical engineering. A world where your job dictates your address, the grass is always green, the air is always clean, and a perfect head of lettuce is waiting for you at the grocery store. It is a complete and total victory. The illusion of a peaceful American suburb isn't just an illusion anymore. For the people living inside, it is reality. But what happens to the human mind when you live for years inside a perfect, hermetically sealed bubble? What happens when every single threat from the outside world has been so completely and utterly neutralized that you forget it even exists? This is where we come to the most subtle and perhaps most dangerous consequence of the town's staggering success. It's a psychological phenomenon that the original planners foresaw and that long-term residents learn to watch out for. They call it bubble blindness. Think about it. A child born and raised in this town has never experienced a day over 80 degrees. A teenager has never had to worry about dust storms or the real, brutal danger of dehydration. To them, the desert seen through a double-paned, UV-coated window looks like a dramatic, beautiful painting. Not a killer. The idea that you could get a second-degree burn from touching a metal gate, or that getting a flat tire just 2 miles outside the wire could be a death sentence, doesn't feel real. It's a logical disconnect. Their entire lived experience tells them that the world is safe, comfortable, and predictable. So when they stand at the perimeter wall, they don't see a hostile planet. They just see a big, empty backyard. But here's the truly terrifying part of bubble blindness. It's not an act of foolishness or arrogance. It is the most natural human reaction possible. The engineering is so successful, so complete, that it has effectively erased the enemy. The residents are like sailors on a perfectly sound submarine who have forgotten about the crushing pressure of the deep ocean just inches away. This isn't a minor problem. It is the single greatest cause of safety incidents. A new employee who thinks they can go for a quick hike with a single bottle of water. A family that decides to go on a spontaneous picnic just outside the gates without the mandatory survival kit. The town's greatest achievement, the creation of absolute total safety, breeds a complacency that is more dangerous than any sandstorm. It is a constant, quiet battle, not against the desert, but against the human mind's incredible ability to adapt and forget. So you have this astonishingly successful illusion, a perfect bubble where the greatest danger is bubble blindness, the human mind forgetting the raw, lethal power of the desert just beyond the walls. But what happens when the very things that make the town a paradise accidentally send an engraved invitation to the desert's most terrifying inhabitants? What happens when your life-giving oasis becomes a beacon for things that crawl and kill in the night? Wrong. This isn't a hypothetical, it is a nightly reality, a constant silent siege. Let's be clear. That man-made heat island we talked about is powerful. It dissuades most larger animals, but it does nothing to stop the things that hunt in the cool of the night. In fact, the town's moisture, the runoff from those green lawns, the cool shadows under buildings, it all creates the perfect hunting ground for the desert's most venomous predators. We're talking about Deathstalker scorpions, whose venom is a horrifying cocktail of neurotoxins so potent it's studied for cancer research. We're talking about massive, terrifyingly fast camel spiders, drawn in by the explosion of insect life. And worst of all, we're talking about sand vipers, masters of camouflage, who can lie perfectly still and unseen in the very sand beside a manicured flower bed. For them, the town isn't a home. It's a 5-star resort with an all-you-can-eat buffet. So how do you defend against an enemy that can slip through a crack the width of a credit card? An enemy that doesn't recognize walls? You fight a war with weapons they can't see. This brings us to the Pest Control Wars, a battle fought every single night by a small elite team of nocturnal guardians. These aren't exterminators, they are the frontline soldiers in a chemical siege. Their mission? to maintain the single most important and most toxic defensive line you will never see. Picture this. Long after the families are asleep, this crew moves out. They don't just spray randomly, they execute a precise military-grade strategy. They begin at the town's absolute outer perimeter, laying down a wide, unbroken line of a specialized, long-lasting granular pesticide. A chemical wall. Then they work their way inward, treating the base of every building, every utility box, every pipe, any potential bridge across their toxic moat. This isn't just about killing the invaders that try to cross. It's about creating a scorched earth barrier so utterly hostile that most creatures sense it and turn back long before they reach it. It is a constant, methodical, and absolutely critical operation. It's another hidden war, won every single night in the dark, so that the children sleeping just a few hundred feet away can continue to suffer from their blissful and hard-earned bubble blindness. So, you have these incredible hidden wars being fought every single night. A chemical siege to protect the town's residents from the desert's most venomous predators. All of this, so the children can sleep peacefully, wrapped in the blissful safety of their hard-earned bubble blindness. But those children eventually wake up. They eat their cereal, delivered by the cold chain, and get ready for school. And this is where the engineers faced one of their most delicate challenges. How do you give thousands of kids a normal childhood, which includes recess, bike rides, and after-school sports, in a place built to withstand the thermal assault? You can't just install a slide and a set of swings when the metal can get hot enough to cause a second-degree burn. The solution is another masterpiece of brutal but necessary regimentation. It's called the heat flag warning system. At every school, every park, and every community centre, a tall flagpole stands as the ultimate authority. Every morning, based on real-time temperature, humidity, and solar radiation data, a flag is raised. A green flag means it's safe for normal outdoor play. A yellow flag means time outside is limited, with mandatory water breaks and rest periods in the shade. But a red flag, that's an order, not a suggestion. It means all outdoor activity is cancelled, no exceptions, and on the most extreme days, a sinister black flag is raised. A black flag is a total lockdown. It means the environment outside is not just dangerous, it's actively lethal. Even walking the short distance from a school bus to the front door is considered a risk. So when that red or black flag is flying, do they just cancel recess? Force kids to sit quietly at their desks staring at the walls, reminded that they live in a beautiful prison? Wrong. That would defeat the entire purpose of the psychological shield. The planners knew that children need to run, to play, to burn off energy. It's a biological and psychological necessity. The real answer is hidden in plain sight. Every school in this town was built with something extraordinary, massive, fully enclosed, and powerfully air-conditioned indoor recreation halls. We're not talking about a standard school gymnasium. Picture an aircraft hangar-sized space with padded AstroTurf floors, full-scale playground equipment made of temperature-safe composites, and even indoor running tracks. It is a perfect, climate-controlled copy of the outside world. It is one more staggering expense, one more incredible feat of engineering, all to ensure that even when the desert is at its most murderous, the sound of children playing never ever stops. It's the ultimate expression of the town's core mission. Inside these walls, life will not just survive, it will be normal. So, you have these incredible, almost unbelievable systems in place. Total climate control, a chemical wall against venomous predators, and vast indoor wonderlands to ensure children can play safely, even when the world outside is literally lethal. The town's core mission seems complete. Life isn't just possible, it's normal. But what about the adults? After a long week of working at the edge of the world, what do they do to relax? You might think they'd have a modest recreation centre, a simple clubhouse, maybe a small community pool. Wrong. These towns don't do modest. The planners understood that to attract and retain the world's top talent, you don't just offer safety and normalcy, you offer a paradise. You create a recreation oasis so luxurious it feels like it belongs at a 5-star resort on the Mediterranean. Let's talk about the swimming pool, plural. Most of these compounds feature massive, sparkling blue Olympic-sized swimming pools. Picture this. It's 125 degrees outside, the sun is a physical weight, and you dive into water that is a shockingly cool, refreshing 80 degrees. But think about that for a moment. How is that possible? In a normal climate, the engineering challenge is heating a pool. Here, the challenge is keeping it from boiling. A standard pool under the full force of the thermal assault would quickly become a human-sized soup pot, with water temperatures soaring past 100 degrees, making it more dangerous than refreshing. So how do they do it? With another hidden masterpiece of engineering, the same life support grid of chilled water that cools the homes has a dedicated super-powered branch that runs directly to the pool. It's a constant, massive chiller loop, a network of pipes that acts like a refrigerator for millions of gallons of water, working 24/7 to pull the sun's relentless energy out. It is a staggering, non-stop battle of thermodynamics, fought just so residents can have a comfortable swim. But here's the most audacious display of all, the final spectacular symbol of victory over the desert, the golf course. Lush green fairways, perfectly manicured putting greens, all carved directly out of the reddish-orange wasteland. But when you build a golf course in a sea of sand, you create a beautiful, almost poetic irony. The sand traps. In any other golf course on Earth, the sand trap is the hazard, a penalty area to be avoided. But here the sand isn't the hazard. It is the natural state of the world. The sand traps are the easiest, cheapest part of the course to build. All the botanical commandos have to do is stop watering and let the desert be itself. The real hazard, the multi-million-dollar, chemically dependent, engineering-intensive miracle, is the grass. Every inch of that perfect green fairway is the true obstacle, a defiant island of life in a world that wants it dead. Think about what that means. For a resident playing around, hitting their ball into the sand is a minor inconvenience, but the very existence of the fairway they're standing on represents a victory against impossible odds. It's the ultimate statement, a place where the desert itself has been reduced from a life-threatening force to a simple gameplay mechanic. It isn't just recreation, it is the peak of psychological dominance. So you have this perfect life, a round of golf on a green fairway, a swim in a cool blue pool, total victory. The desert has been so completely and utterly conquered that it's been reduced to a gameplay mechanic in a sand trap. It feels like nothing can ever go wrong. But what happens when the one thing that breaks isn't a pipe, a generator, or an air conditioner? What happens when the system that fails is the human body? A hard-working engineer suffers a sudden heart attack. A child takes a bad fall from their bike and suffers a serious head injury. Or worse, a new arrival, blinded by the bubble of safety, goes for a jog outside the wire and succumbs to the thermal assault. You just call for a helicopter, right? Medevac them to the nearest major hospital. Wrong, that is a death sentence. Think about the brutal math. The nearest real city, the kind with a top-tier hospital, is often a 2 or 3 hour helicopter ride away, and in a medical emergency you don't have hours, you have minutes. Doctors talk about a concept called the golden hour, the critical window of time after a traumatic injury or medical event during which there is the highest likelihood that prompt medical treatment will prevent death. For a catastrophic heat stroke, that golden hour is unforgiving. It isn't just about being hot, it is a rapid, cascading organ failure. The body's core temperature skyrockets, and the clock starts ticking down to permanent brain damage and death. A helicopter is simply too slow. The desert would win that race every single time. So how do you solve for the tyranny of distance? How do you protect the single most valuable asset in this entire settlement, the people? You build another impossible hidden system. Tucked away in a quiet corner of town looking like just another administrative building is the final, most important piece of the town's life support grid, a fully staffed, state-of-the-art trauma centre. This isn't a small-town clinic with a nurse and a box of Band-Aids. We're talking about a medical facility with capabilities rivaling a hospital in a major city, a 24/7 emergency room staffed by elite doctors and nurses trained in everything from cardiac arrest to industrial accidents, an on-site operating theatre always prepped for surgery, an intensive care unit, a place that can take a person from the brink of death and stabilise them, here inside the walls. This is the ultimate safety net. It's the planner's final staggering investment, a declaration that even when the human body fails, the system built around it will not. It is the one piece of engineering that allows everyone, from the top executive to the youngest child, to live with the genuine belief that they are truly, completely safe. It's the ultimate guarantee that no matter what goes wrong, you will not be abandoned to the mercy of the desert. So you have this ultimate safety net, a state-of-the-art trauma center that guarantees no matter what goes wrong with the human body, you will not be abandoned to the desert. The physical war is won. The engineers have thought of everything. But what about the one threat that no amount of concrete, chilled water or medical technology can ever defeat? What about the universal human enemy? Loneliness. Think about it. You've just arrived in this perfect engineered bubble. You're thousands of miles from everyone and everything you've ever known. You might think that building a real community, real friendships, would be a slow, difficult process. Wrong. In fact, the exact opposite happens. The social connections here form faster and run deeper than almost anywhere else on Earth. It is a powerful and deeply poignant social dynamic that residents know intimately. They call it transient roots. Here's how this incredible phenomenon works. Every single family in this town is on a contract, typically lasting between 2 and 5 years. This isn't a place people move to for life. It's a temporary chapter, and that shared deadline changes everything. Imagine moving to a new town where you and every single one of your neighbors are arriving at the same time. There are no pre-existing cliques from high school, no families that have known each other for generations. Everyone is starting from scratch. Everyone is looking for a connection. This creates a social acceleration that is absolutely stunning. Friendships that would take a decade to bloom in a normal suburb are forged here in a matter of weeks. Families become inseparable, creating bonds as deep as blood. But here's the brutal, heartbreaking cost of transient roots. That same clock that forces these incredible bonds into existence is also a ticking time bomb. The entire community exists in a perpetual emotional paradox. It is a place of intense hellos and equally intense goodbyes. Think about what that means. For every joy-filled welcoming party for a new family, there is a tear-filled farewell BBQ for one that is leaving. It is a revolving door of best friends. Children learn to form profound friendships, and then learn to say goodbye to them every 2 years, not as an unexpected tragedy, but as a simple, recurring fact of life. This is the final and most human of all the town's hidden systems, a community that has engineered a way to love fiercely and let go gracefully because it has no other choice. It is a testament to the resilience of the human heart, one more incredible adaptation that makes life not just possible but deeply meaningful in the middle of nowhere. So you have this astonishing self-healing community, a place where the bonds of friendship form with incredible speed to fight off loneliness, where a state-of-the-art trauma center stands guard against physical harm, and where life is engineered to be not just safe, but perfect. But think about that perfection for a moment. The pristine streets, free from a single speck of wind-blown dust, the plumbing that never fails, the landscaping that is always flawlessly manicured. Who is actually doing this work? Who gets the call at 3 a.m. when a critical water main bursts? You might imagine an army of advanced robots, or a resident co-op where everyone pitches in. Wrong. The truth is far more complex and reveals another completely hidden layer of this human machine. The perfection you see is maintained by an entirely different community, an unseen parallel workforce that the planners refer to with military respect. They call them the maintenance army. We are talking about a dedicated force, thousands strong, composed almost entirely of third country nationals. These are the tireless men who are the hands-on guardians of the town's physical reality. They are the plumbers, the electricians, the street sweepers, the sanitation crews, the landscape technicians who wage the daily inch-by-inch battle against entropy. But here's the part that would be completely invisible to an average resident. These thousands of workers do not live inside the pristine walls of the town. They don't have assigned townhomes or access to the recreation oasis. They live in their own separate dedicated camps, often miles away, hidden from view behind a ridge of dunes. These camps are engineered with a different purpose in mind. Not the illusion of suburbia, but pure mission-focused efficiency. We're talking about vast, dense complexes of dormitory-style housing and massive centralized mess halls. And here is the daily ritual that makes the entire paradise possible. Picture this. Long before the sun even begins to hint at the horizon, while the main town is still wrapped in a silent air-conditioned slumber, a fleet of buses rumbles to life. They pour out of the support camps and make the journey to the main perimeter, passing through the same airlock gates as the refrigerated supply trucks. Once inside, this army fans out across the silent streets. They are like ghosts, cleaning every surface, collecting the trash, checking every pump, and resetting the stage of this perfect world before its residents have their first cup of coffee. By sunrise, they're gone, their work finished, leaving behind no trace except for flawless, effortless perfection. This isn't a secondary operation, it is the absolute foundation. Every single system we've talked about, from the chilled water to the green lawns, relies on the constant hands-on work of this unseen force. They are the silent, dedicated human machinery that makes the whole impossible dream a reality day after day. So you have the maintenance army, a silent, dedicated force that resets the stage of this perfect world every single morning, ensuring that not a single speck of dust mars the illusion. The town exists in a state of flawless, engineered perfection. But what happens when the desert stops its slow, insidious particulate invasion and decides to launch a full-scale frontal assault? What happens when a force of nature so vast and so powerful appears on the horizon that it makes everything man-made seem small and fragile? You might think the town's incredible positive pressure systems, the ones that create that invisible force field of clean air, can just handle it. Wrong, not even close. We are talking about a haboob, a monstrous biblical-scale wall of sand and dust, often stretching miles wide and rising thousands of feet into the air. A churning 100-story-tall monster that rolls across the landscape, swallowing everything in its path and turning bright daylight into an apocalyptic midnight darkness. This isn't a dust storm, it's a temporary end of the world, and when the town's long-range sensors detect one bearing down, it triggers a system-wide automated sequence of defensive maneuvers. It's called the Sandstorm Protocol. It begins not with a request, but with an order, blasted from sirens across the entire town. This isn't a drill. All personnel are to immediately seek shelter. The perimeter airlocks are sealed. It is the fortress pulling up its drawbridge and preparing for a siege. Instantly the airport, that fragile starting point for the cold chain lifeline, becomes the first casualty. It simply ceases to exist as a functioning airfield. In zero visibility conditions with hurricane-force winds filled with abrasive sand, landing a plane isn't just risky, it's impossible. The town is now truly, completely isolated. But the most critical battle is happening at the town's industrial heart, the life support grid. The massive intakes for the central cooling plant are suddenly facing an onslaught of particulate matter so dense it would clog and destroy a normal filtration system in minutes. This would trigger a catastrophic, cascading failure of the entire town. So the protocol forces the entire grid into emergency filtration mode, a desperate power-hungry procedure where a secondary system of ultra-dense, military-grade filters swings into place. Simultaneously, high-pressure water jets may activate at the mouths of the main intakes, creating a violent curtain of water designed to literally knock the heaviest dust out of the air before it can even reach the machinery. The hum of the power grid intensifies, straining to keep this battle going. And then comes the most terrifying, most humbling spectacle of all. As the haboob hits, the sky turns from blue to a sickly yellow to a deep blood red, and then, in a matter of minutes, to pitch black. Midday becomes midnight. Streetlights flicker on across the perfect suburb, casting an eerie, isolated glow against a suffocating wall of brown nothingness. This is the moment that bubble blindness is violently shattered for every single resident. This is the raw, untamable power of the desert making itself known. The Sandstorm Protocol isn't just a series of procedures, it is the ultimate coordinated test of every single piece of engineering in the entire settlement. It's a masterpiece of planned survival against an enemy that will never negotiate. So the fortress holds, the Sandstorm Protocol works. After hours of a howling black-red siege, the haboob passes, leaving the town standing, a testament to the most incredible defensive engineering imaginable. The all-clear sounds and life inside the bubble flickers back to normal. But that victory, and every other system we've discussed, from the chilled water in the pools to the thousands of daily showers and the endless irrigation of the green lawns, creates a constant hidden challenge. a logistical problem that is far less glamorous than a sandstorm but just as critical to solve. Where does all the water go? You might think that in a place surrounded by an endless empty desert, the answer is simple. Just build a pipe and pump all the wastewater, the sewage, the grey water from sinks and laundries, far away from the town, out of sight, out of mind. Wrong. That would be an unthinkable waste of the single most precious resource in this entire settlement. The goal here isn't disposal. The goal is the closed-loop mandate, to capture, treat, and recycle 100% of the town's wastewater and return it to the system. This seems simple enough. In a normal city, wastewater treatment is a solved problem. You pipe the water to a facility where an army of microscopic bacteria, nature's own cleanup crew, gets to work, biologically breaking down all the organic material. It's an efficient 1,000-year-old process. But here's the brutal scientific twist. In the desert, that process fails. The wastewater in the pipes and holding tanks, superheated by the thermal assault, becomes too hot for the delicate bacteria to survive. The system that works perfectly in Ohio or France literally gets cooked alive. The biological breakdown slows to a crawl, creating a toxic, septic nightmare. The desert has found another way to attack, by turning the laws of biology against the town. So how do you treat waste when your microscopic workforce has been boiled to death? You don't just build a shade cover. You fire your biological army and replace it with a system of pure, relentless chemical and physical warfare. Picture this. Another hidden, industrial facility on the edge of town, humming with power. Here, the hot wastewater is subjected to a multi-stage blitzkrieg. First, advanced microfiltration systems physically rip out any solids. Then, the water is hit with a precise chemical cocktail neutralizing contaminants. But here is the masterstroke. The final stage. The water is channeled through a maze of pipes where it is blasted with an absolutely lethal dose of high-intensity ultraviolet light. This isn't a gentle sterilization. It is a blast of pure energy that shreds the DNA of any remaining virus or bacteria, rendering the water completely and utterly sterile. And what happens to this nutrient-rich, sterile water? It is pumped directly back into the irrigation mains. It is the new lifeblood for the psychological shield. The water from a morning shower becomes the water that feeds a perfect green lawn that same afternoon. This isn't just recycling. It is a completely man-made water cycle, a masterpiece of engineering that refuses to let the desert win, even on a microscopic biological battlefield. It is the final proof that in this town nothing is left to chance, not even the sewage. So every drop of water is recycled. Every lawn is a perfect, chemically balanced green. Every single system, from the power grid to the sewage, is a masterpiece of control, designed to create a flawless, frictionless life. The war against the desert seems to have been won completely. But what happens when you raise a generation inside that perfect victory? What is life like for a teenager who has never known anything but this bubble of absolute safety and manufactured normalcy? You might think they are the luckiest, most well-adjusted kids on the planet. Wrong. What the planners discovered and what residents now grapple with is a profound and deeply troubling side effect of this perfect world. A psychological challenge that no amount of engineering can solve. They call it the golden cage syndrome. Imagine you're 16 years old here. You have it all. The Olympic-sized pool, the indoor recreation centre, the high-speed internet. Your education is top tier. You're completely safe from the venomous creatures of the night, from the brutal thermal assault, from the dangers of the world beyond the wall. You even have a driver's license, but think about that for a moment. Where can you possibly drive? The pristine streets of the town form a closed loop. You can drive to the grocery store. You can drive to the community centre. You can drive to your friend's house. But you can never just drive. The road doesn't lead to the next town over. It doesn't lead to a scenic lookout or a cheap movie theatre. Every road leads to one place, the main gate, the airlock, the hard stop. This isn't about spoiled kids being ungrateful for their life of luxury. It's a deeper, more fundamental problem. The teenage years are defined by a universal human need for exploration, for autonomy, for testing the boundaries of your world and yourself. It's a rite of passage. But here, there are no boundaries to test. The world isn't a vast, unpredictable map to be discovered. It's a small, beautiful and completely finite blueprint that you have memorized by the age of 10. The result is a strange, quiet restlessness. A generation raised in a paradise they are desperate to escape from but can't. Total safety, total comfort, and zero freedom. It is the town's most perfect and perhaps most tragic accomplishment, creating a prison with walls made not of concrete, but of pure, unblemished perfection. So you have the Golden Cage, a generation of teenagers raised in a paradise they are desperate to escape, a perfect, beautiful prison where the greatest obstacle is the lack of one. It seems like the one problem the engineers couldn't solve, the final tragic irony of their spectacular success. So are these kids, the children of this engineered mirage, doomed to a life of restless dissatisfaction, forever searching for a challenge they were never allowed to face? Wrong! The planners thought of that too, and their solution is perhaps the most brilliant and far-sighted piece of social engineering in the entire settlement. They didn't just build schools, they built launch pads. The education these kids receive isn't just top tier, it is a hyper-global curriculum designed with one goal in mind: to turn residents of this isolated bubble into the ultimate citizens of the world. They learn multiple languages. They are coached from a young age for entrance into elite universities on 3 different continents. And that painful cycle of transient roots, the constant heartbreaking goodbyes, forges in them a social resilience that is almost superhuman. They learn to build deep connections instantly and to navigate new social landscapes with an ease that is simply staggering. Think about what that means. The Golden Cage isn't a prison in the end, it's a crucible. It takes these children and forges them into a new kind of human, hyper-adaptable, emotionally intelligent, and completely unintimidated by the prospect of moving to a new country, because their entire life has been a dress rehearsal for exactly that. It is the town's final and most profound victory, not just engineering a home, but engineering the people who are destined to leave it. So when you pull the camera back one last time, returning to that impossible view from the beginning, that perfect island of green and white in a sea of red sand, what do you really see now? You see more than just houses and streets. You see a complete living organism, a single, interconnected machine of survival and aspiration. You see the invisible force field of positive pressure air, the hidden arteries of chilled water, the refrigerated lifeline stretching across a continent for a single head of lettuce, the silent chemical war being waged against salt in the soil, the ever-present hum of an army of generators standing guard, and the quiet dedication of the maintenance army that resets the stage for perfection every single dawn. What you're looking at is one of the most audacious statements humanity has ever made. It's what happens when our species looks at one of the most hostile environments on Earth, a place that screams, "You cannot live here," and simply, calmly says, "Yes, we can." These desert towns are more than just incredible feats of corporate engineering. They are a testament to our relentless, almost defiant drive to build, to connect, and to create normalcy in the most abnormal places imaginable. They are living laboratories that prove what it takes to conquer not just heat and dust, but loneliness, distance, and despair. And in a world facing new challenges on a global scale, they are a powerful, awe-inspiring glimpse into our own future. If you are amazed by the sheer force of will it takes to turn an impossible landscape into a home, type pioneer in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe because the story of human ingenuity is just getting started. But before we sign off, there's one last detail, one final, almost hidden piece of engineering that reveals the true depth of the planners' thinking and the one terrifying enemy they couldn't just build a wall against. After conquering heat, dust, distance, and even biology, what was the one wild card they still feared could bring the entire paradise crashing down? It's fire. In an environment where the air is bone dry and the wind is a constant, relentless force, a fire isn't a problem. It's an apocalypse. A simple kitchen fire, a forgotten pan of oil, wouldn't just threaten one house. With the desert winds, it could become a firestorm, leaping from roof to roof and consuming an entire street in minutes. A traditional fire department, no matter how fast, would be arriving at a funeral. So did they just install a few extra smoke detectors and hope for the best? Wrong! They planned for the inevitable human error with a truly aggressive, almost paranoid solution you will almost never see in a private home. Picture this. In every single residential kitchen built directly into the ventilation hood above every stove is a commercial-grade automated fire suppression system. It's the same technology used to protect million-dollar restaurant kitchens or the engine bays of race cars. Imagine you get distracted for just a moment, and that pan of oil on the stove flashes into a column of flame. Before your brain can even register the danger, before the smoke alarm has a chance to make its first chirp, it's already over. Optical sensors in the hood detect the unique flicker of a flame. In less than 1/10 of a second, two things happen at once. The system instantly cuts all power or gas to the stove, and at the exact same moment, integrated nozzles blast the fire with a specialized chemical suppressant that smothers the flames completely. The fire is dead before you even knew you were in danger. This isn't just an added safety feature, it is the final, brilliant admission from the engineers. They knew that while you can build a perfect world, you can't build a perfect person. So instead, they engineered a way to make common mistakes physically impossible. It's the ultimate safety net, ensuring that one moment of forgetfulness can never be the spark that brings the entire, impossible dream crashing down in smoke and ash. That tiny automated system snuffing out a kitchen fire before you even knew you were in danger. It is the final, most profound statement of all. Because after conquering the desert's heat, its dust, its distance, and even its biology, the planners turned their focus to the last and most unpredictable frontier, human nature itself. They admitted that after building a fortress against the entire planet, the greatest remaining threat wasn't a sandstorm or a scorpion. It was a single forgetful moment, and they engineered a solution for that too. So when you pull the camera back for the very last time, what do you really see? You're no longer looking at just a collection of incredible systems, the chilled water, the positive pressure air, the refrigerated trucks. You see something more. You see a series of victories in 3 distinct invisible wars, all waged at once. There is the war against the physical world, a battle fought with 12-foot concrete walls, chemical moats, and a defensive curtain of pure raw heat. There is the war against distance, a battle won by fleets of climate-controlled trucks, and a state-of-the-art trauma center, all designed to deny the desert its tyranny over time and space. And finally, the most difficult war of all, the war against the human psyche, a battle against despair, won with green grass, a battle against loneliness, won with the accelerated bonds of transient roots, and a battle against our own complacency and human error, won by a culture of extreme safety and systems that make catastrophic mistakes impossible. So in the end, that perfect, impossible town floating in a sea of red sand isn't a testament to just one thing. It isn't just about engineering, it's not just about logistics, and it's not simply a corporate outpost. Wrong. It is a monument to the most fundamental, and perhaps most audacious human instinct of all, the relentless drive to impose order on chaos, the unbreakable need to build a home. These settlements prove that for humanity, uninhabitable is not a fact. It is a challenge. They are living proof that our species' greatest talent isn't just adapting to our environment, but forcing our environment to adapt to us. It is a story of total mastery written in concrete, steel, and one perfect, defiant blade of grass. If you are in awe of this human drive to conquer the impossible, type mastery in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe because the story of human ingenuity is far from over.